She stabbed me in the back for a promotion, but her lies caught up to her. I had always considered myself lucky to have found Mia at work. From the day I started at the company, she had been my anchor. She was warm, funny, and the kind of person who could make even the most tedious meetings feel like a private joke. We were a team, two halves of a dynamic duo that our coworkers often envied. People said we worked so well together because we were so different. She had this magnetic charisma, and I was the organized one who kept us on track. When the promotion was announced, it felt like the perfect opportunity. Both Mia and I had been with the company for years, and we often talked about how we'd love to rise through the ranks together. The opening was for a senior management role, and although there was only one position, I secretly hoped one of us would get it. It was a competitive process, but we reassured each other constantly that whoever earned it deserved it. Or so I thought. At first, everything seemed normal. We brainstormed ideas together and even rehearsed for the interviews. Mia had always been the creative spark between us, and I'd never thought twice about sharing my insights or strategies. She'd ask me questions about how I'd approach certain challenges, and I naively assumed she was preparing to better herself. I never saw the tiny shifts in her demeanor, the way she'd subtly steer conversations to highlight her strengths while downplaying mine. The first crack appeared when a coworker approached me in the break room and awkwardly mentioned a rumor. According to them, I had a reputation for being difficult to work with. I laughed it off at first, convinced it was some kind of misunderstanding. But then it happened again and again. Comments about my so-called temper or micromanaging tendencies started to surface in meetings. I began noticing how Mia would shift uncomfortably or change the subject when these things came up, as if she didn't want to get involved. Then came the final presentations for the promotion and Mia suggested we go over our pitches together. Mia's pitch was flawless, filled with ideas we discussed together. But what caught me off guard was how she subtly framed her strengths in contrast to weaknesses that sounded eerily familiar, my weaknesses. She spoke about the importance of managing teams with empathy and creating space for open collaboration, phrases that seemed pointed, almost accusatory. The room ate it up, and I felt a pang of betrayal I couldn't quite articulate. The final blow came a week later when I overheard two coworkers talking near the printer. They mentioned how lucky Mia was to have survived working with me, how she'd apparently told them she often had to mediate conflicts I started. My blood ran cold as the realization hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an unfortunate coincidence. Mia had been planting these stories for weeks, maybe months, ensuring that if it came down to the two of us, she'd be the obvious choice. It all started to make sense. The small, offhand comments she'd made to me, the way she'd expertly navigated conversations to highlight her virtues and my supposed flaws. She wasn't just competing for the promotion. She was dismantling me piece by piece, ensuring there was no competition at all. At first, the revelation paralyzed me. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep, couldn't even look Mia in the eye. I felt betrayed on a level I'd never experienced before. The weight of it all crushed me, and I began to doubt every part of myself. Was I truly the person she'd made me out to be? Had I been blind to my own flaws this entire time? The whispers of self-doubt were relentless, and I found myself spiraling, retreating into my own thoughts more each day. But somewhere in the fog of despair, a spark of anger ignited. It wasn't the fiery, uncontrolled rage that consumes, it was a slow burn, steady and grounding. I realized that I couldn't let her win, not like this. The person I was before Mia's campaign against me hadn't vanished. I was still capable, hardworking, and worthy of the respect I'd once commanded. If anything, her betrayal was proof of my value. She wouldn't have gone to such lengths if I wasn't a threat. I began to piece myself back together, one step at a time. First, I reached out to a few coworkers I trusted implicitly. I asked them candidly about their experiences working with me, not mentioning Mia or the rumors. Their feedback was reassuring, even validating. They described me as fair, driven, and approachable, the very opposite of what had been circulating. It was a lifeline, a reminder that my identity wasn't defined by her lies. Next, I started subtly countering the narrative Mia had built. I became more vocal in meetings, ensuring my contributions were visible and undeniable. I made an effort to be more present, more engaged, and more open with my team. It wasn't about overcorrecting or trying to prove myself, it was about reclaiming the space I had allowed Mia to steal. Slowly, I felt the tide begin to turn. Coworkers started coming to me again for advice, and I noticed fewer side glances and hushed conversations in the hallways. The hardest part was facing Mia. Every interaction felt like a battle, even if it was unspoken. I could see the flicker of surprise in her eyes as I began to rebuild my confidence. She hadn't expected me to recover, to push back against the narrative she'd so carefully constructed. I didn't confront her directly, not yet. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my reputation and my sense of self. I needed to be strategic, just as she had been. With the team's feedback in hand, I began reworking my pitch for the promotion. I approached it with the same meticulous care I'd always been known for, but this time, I made sure it was infused with a confidence that couldn't be questioned. Every suggestion my colleagues had offered was thoughtfully incorporated, showing not just my skills but also my ability to listen and adapt. It wasn't just a presentation anymore, it was a statement of who I was and what I could bring to the table. When the day came to present it, I could feel the tension in the room. Mia was there, of course, watching me with that calculated smile she always wore. But I didn't let it shake me. I spoke with clarity and purpose, laying out my vision and backing it up with solid examples of my past successes. The questions that followed were tough, but I answered them with the confidence of someone who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. By the end, I could see the approving nods around the table. A week later, the announcement came. I had earned the promotion. The relief was overwhelming, but it was also bittersweet. I knew this wasn't just about the new title or responsibilities, it was about reclaiming my place and proving to myself that I was more than the narrative Mia had tried to create. My coworkers' congratulations felt genuine, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of belonging again. But I also knew this wasn't the end of the battle. With my position secure, I decided it was time to address what had happened. I reached out to HR, carefully outlining everything I had observed and experienced. I provided specific examples, dates, and even the comments I'd overheard. It wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. HR assured me they would investigate, and although I knew it would be a long process, I felt a sense of closure just in taking that step. Mia's actions couldn't be ignored any longer. The fallout was swift. As the investigation progressed, more of Mia's manipulations came to light. Coworkers who had initially been wary of speaking up started sharing their own experiences with Mia. Stories of her subtle manipulations, her tendency to twist narratives, and the small ways she sowed discord in the team began to emerge. It was like a domino effect, one person's courage emboldened another, and the truth unraveled quickly. The HR investigation confirmed what I already knew but brought to light even more. Emails she'd sent, carefully worded to plant doubt, conversations overheard where she subtly demeaned me while appearing supportive, it was all documented. When the findings were shared with leadership, the consequences were swift. Mia was called into a meeting with HR and upper management. Though I wasn't privy to the details, the aftermath was unmistakable. Her usual confidence seemed shaken, her smiles more forced, her presence less magnetic. For someone who thrived on perception, the loss of her carefully curated image was devastating. But Mia wasn't the type to go quietly. A few days after the investigation concluded, I left the office late, the parking lot nearly deserted. I spotted her leaning against her car, her arms crossed tightly. The moment she saw me, she pushed off with a force that matched the anger on her face. She launched into a tirade before I could even respond. Her voice was sharp, trembling with frustration. She accused me of ruining her career, of turning everyone against her. She claimed that I'd overreacted, that her actions were just the way the game was played. It was almost laughable, the way she tried to frame herself as the victim. I stood there, calm but resolute, as she ranted. I didn't owe her an explanation, and I wasn't about to let her bait me into an argument. Her words, once so calculated and cutting, felt hollow now, desperate. She was unraveling in front of me, the weight of her own lies collapsing on her. Finally, when her words ran dry, she glared at me with a mixture of fury and disbelief. I said nothing, just turned and walked to my car. As I drove away, her voice echoed faintly in the distance, but I didn't look back. The next day at work, one of my team members, who had also been working late with me the day before, approached me nervously. They explained that they had overheard Mia's outburst in the parking lot and, without intending to escalate anything, had recorded it from a distance. They handed me their phone, the video file already queued up. I couldn't believe how damning it was. Mia's words weren't just heated, they were incriminating. She outright admitted to sabotaging me, framing it as playing the game, and blamed me for the fallout of her own actions. It was undeniable proof of her misconduct. With the evidence in hand, my team member and I decided to take it to HR. They filed a formal complaint, attaching the recording, while I corroborated their account with my own experiences. HR took the matter seriously, scheduling an immediate review of the evidence and calling witnesses to verify the context of the recording. The fallout was swift and unavoidable. Within days, Mia was called into another meeting with HR and upper management. This time, the consequences were far more severe. The recording, combined with the results of the initial investigation, left no room for excuses. Her actions were classified as misconduct, and she was formally demoted to a lower-level role. Any chance of salvaging her reputation was obliterated. The atmosphere at work shifted almost immediately. The facade Mia had so carefully constructed crumbled completely, leaving her isolated. Coworkers who had once gravitated toward her charm now avoided her, unwilling to associate with someone who had so blatantly betrayed their trust. She became a ghost in the office, her presence diminished to a shadow of what it once was. A few weeks later, I learned that Mia had requested a transfer, not just to another department but to a different branch altogether. It was clear she saw no way to recover from the damage she had done. No one seemed sad to see her go. If anything, her departure felt like a collective exhale for the team. For me, this wasn't just about redemption anymore. It was about closure. The promotion was a victory, but regaining my dignity and proving that integrity could triumph over manipulation mattered far more. The scars Mia left behind were real, but so was my resilience. I walked into work each day with my head held high, knowing that I had survived and come out stronger, and this time, on my own terms.